Welcome back to my driveway here in beautiful Wyoming. I'm so glad to be back with you guys. Welcome back to the channel and welcome 2022. Man, it is good to be home. My wife and I have been traveling for the most of the month of January, so I'm super glad to be back in the garage and back making content for you guys. I do have to briefly apologize for the lack of engagement on the channel. I apologize for not responding to a lot of your comments. I'm going to get to that here very shortly. Just in January alone, I've been in 9 different states, so it is really good to be back home. A friend of mine a couple weeks ago asked me what I had in store for YouTube for 2022, if I had any big plans for YouTube. And at the time I didn't, and I told him I don't really have any plans or anything special coming up. But then we went ahead and we made a couple of purchases, and you know that I've got a lot of stuff going on, and so with a couple of new vehicles coming in, we've got to move some stuff around in the garage, and we have a few vehicles leaving. Thought I wanted to kick 2022 off right and give you guys a brief garage update and a quick overview of what I've got in store for you for this year, but I am so excited for 2022. I cannot wait to make and continue to make content for you guys. For this garage update, I think we'll start at the oldest vehicle and we'll work down to the newest purchase. So the oldest vehicle behind me, the vehicle of 5 years, is my 2004 F-150 FX4. I bought this truck 5 years ago to use as my daily driver. I was driving from Burlington, Wyoming to school in Rexburg, Idaho, and everywhere else in between. It was my only vehicle. Since I've got married, I've since purchased a commuter, and practically we still drive this a lot, but it's usually on, you know, a long road trip or when we're going camping or when we need a pickup truck. And we've since moved back to Wyoming, and so this truck now gets used a lot for work, and it's kind of getting back into being used as a daily driver. So I purchased it at 150,000 miles. This last year, we've now ran it up to 203,000 miles, still in really good condition. I have been religious and kind of like a Nazi on maintenance on this vehicle. I've wanted it to last a long time. Now, unfortunately, it's got the 5.4 liter 3-valve Triton engine in it. And if you know anything about the Triton motors, they're pretty decent motors. They run for a long time, but they all fail the same way. Now, they just didn't build these motors with a high enough oil flow or oil flow capacity, or I don't know what you want to call it, but it causes some of the timing components to fail. And that's exactly what's happening to the motor that's in this truck. I do think it would go maybe a little bit longer, but I've been doing research to see how we could correct this issue. And I could throw a new timing chain kit in it. That would cost $2,800 at a shop, and it would only prolong the life of this engine. But eventually that same problem is going to come back, and eventually that timing chain will break and grenade the motor. Another good fix for this that a lot of seasoned mechanics recommend is just putting a new remanufactured motor in it, where they've bored the oil jets out a little bigger and put a higher flow oil pump in it. They also use some better materials in the timing chain tensioners and things, and supposedly it completely corrects that issue. Now, if you know the old 2-valve 5.4 motors, super good engine. They're 500,000 mile motors. The 3 valves, they're about 250,000 mile motors, which is what my truck is getting closer to. So I've either got to do something with the engine on this truck, or we've got to sell it, which unfortunately my wife and I are kind of leaning towards right now, where the market is so high. I think that if I list this truck and do a good job advertising it, I may be able to find a buyer that'll pay close to what I paid for this truck back 5 years ago, which would be awesome because I don't really lose a lot of value in it by using it over the last 5 years and putting over 50,000 miles on it. I can't understand why a lot of people are spending so much money on these old broken down pickups until I look at how much a new pickup is. So spending $10,000 and then another, $5,000 putting another motor into it, so you have a $15,000 truck overall, is definitely a lot cheaper than buying an $80,000 truck and having a car payment. So I kind of understand where the market's at, but I don't really understand it. Now, the way this motor sounds, because it sounds like an eco diesel and it's could be about ready to blow up. It could go another 10 years. I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to give me the price that I want for this. And if that's the case, we'll just keep it. I'll keep driving it around as a daily for work in my construction company. We'll pull real trailers or little trailers with it once in a while here and there. And I'll just kind of keep driving it here locally until the truck decides to grenade out, or until I have enough saved up that I can put a different engine in it, which I would do myself, and all of that content will be on my channel, so bigger button down below. The next vehicle in the garage is my 1995 Toyota Camry LE. This has the 2.2 liter Toyota 4-cylinder in it, a very, very reliable car, just not the most fun to drive. If you remember back to when I really started doing YouTube, I had two other cars before this. The first was my 1999 Audi A8 Quattro that I rebuilt. We did head gaskets, we resealed the motor, we did all sorts of stuff to that car, which all of the content is still on my YouTube channel. I just sold it to someone here in Wyoming just over the mountain. They work in the oil field, and as far as I know, they are still driving that car almost everywhere they go, just kind of as a backup and as a fun car, which I love that. We sold that. And then we also had my wife's Hyundai. So she bought it just before we got married. We got married, and then I didn't ever really use that car as a commuter or drive it much. She drove it all of the time to work and to school there in Rexburg. And when we went to go visit her family, we would drive it almost all the time from Rexburg to Grace, so about 2 hours. Really good car. We actually sold that car to my mother-in-law, who is still driving it to this day and has put over 15,000 miles on it. So if you want a Hyundai update or an update on that specific Hyundai, that Hyundai Sonata, which was my wife's car, I don't know if I mentioned that, drop a comment down below, because I started a series on the channel on that car. We did all new shock struts and brakes, and we kind of never finished that series. So if you want an update on that car, leave me a comment below so that I know to go make a video on it next time we're visiting my mother-in-law and my wife's family. Okay, so that's enough of me blabbing. Let's go ahead and talk about my 95 Camry. So we were living in Rexburg at the time, and I was commuting to Idaho Falls every day, and back I had over an hour-long commute total. I was racking up a ton of miles on the Audi, which was actually breaking down all of the time. And every time it broke down, it was so inconvenient because I was like 30 or 40 miles away from home, and that car was so expensive to work on. I'd always said if I could buy a low mileage example of an old Camry or a 90s Honda Accord, I would do so, because they're just really, really great cars. Not exactly in the term of driver's experience like my Audi was, but more so in the fact that they get you from point A to point B, burning very little gas and never, ever breaking down. So this car come up for sale in the Facebook Marketplace, just over an hour away from where we were living in Pocatello. After work one day, I drove up, I checked it out. I ended up buying it because it was in really good low mileage condition. So I bought this car at 109,000 miles. I've now put just over 10,000 miles on it. We're almost at 120,000 miles. This car, like I said, might not be great to just drive around. It's got like 120 horsepower. It's on like a 4-speed transmission, but it is super reliable. And it saved me so much money from driving my Audi all the time, which at the time I couldn't sell for some reason. And it saved me so much money on gas. I went from, I think, 19 miles to the gallon to like 31 miles to the gallon in this Camry. So this Camry was a very needed purchase at the time. I couldn't really own 4 vehicles at the time, but unfortunately I had to. I was trying to sell my Audi at the time. I had it listed for like $1,000 and nobody wanted it. I just sold it for almost $2,000. I bought this right when COVID started, and I was super grateful I did, because gas started to come up. My commute wasn't getting any shorter, and I couldn't afford any more repairs on the Audi. I make it sound like this car has been perfect, but that's not quite the case, because this car is like 30 years old. I have put a little bit of work into it, but mostly from age-related items. We did all new shocks and struts around. I did new motor mounts up front, and I had the AC compressor clutch burn out on me due to, you know, that little rubber bushing that's inside of there. So we've put a little bit of money into the car, but nowhere near what we had into the Audi. This still to date has been my cheapest car ever to own and to consistently drive, insure, put gas in, all of that. Again, not a great car for driver's experience, but definitely a great car to own. And I have some unfortunate news for my runaround car. We're actually going to be selling this because we bought the 2015 Ford Focus pretty recently. Now, we do use the 15 Focus to commute from here to Idaho to go visit family, something that I'm not as inclined to do in my 30-year-old Toyota Camry. So it's time for the Camry to be leaving simply because it takes up too much space in the garage. And quite honestly, we drive it a lot, but I don't really need to now that we have a different car to replace it with. I don't really or can't really justify having two cars, and the Ford Focus actually gets like close to 40 miles to the gallon, which is a little bit better than this ancient 4-cylinder in this Toyota Camry. Something else in the garage that I've always wanted to own is my 2002 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD with the 6.6 liter Duramax diesel engine. Never meet your heroes, they say. Well, my hero's actually been pretty good. No, this is not the LBZ. It's just the old LB7, which, you know, has less horsepower, less torque, and is not as reliable. But I've absolutely loved owning this truck. And unless I decide to buy a different diesel pickup or an LBZ or maybe a 5.9 Cummins or something, maybe we'll talk more about that in a future video. This Duramax pickup is here to stay in the garage. In fact, this next week I'm going to be putting a lift pump on the truck. If you're not already, click the link in my description and go subscribe to my Nate's Trucks YouTube channel because any video on this truck will be there. I've done a little bit of content here on Evo Auto on this truck, so jump back again onto the channel from when I bought this a year ago and check out those videos. So I've owned it just over a year. I bought it at 173 or 2,000, and now I have 183,000, which you're thinking, how in the world with 7 vehicles do you put 10,000 miles on every single vehicle every year? And guys, I have no idea. I don't know, but we put 10,000 miles on this truck. Not a single hiccup. This truck has been the best vehicle I have ever, hands down, in my life owned. I've loved my F-150. I've hardly put any money into my F-150, but this truck come with a stack of service records this thick for like way over the amount of what I paid for this truck, which I don't want to disclose because I bought this truck right before the market really skyrocketed and swung up. So if I were to sell it right now, I would make a pretty penny, which I have considered, and I have actually listed this truck on the marketplace. In fact, in my last garage update video, I told you guys that I was selling this truck. Well, I never sold it, and suddenly I had to start using it for work again because we do small-time construction and we're on the road a lot with trailers. I pulled that listing off the marketplace, and as of right now, I'm selling the F-150, I'm selling the 2 Camrys, and this truck is here to stay. You've got to understand, doing small-time construction and being a small business owner is that like 90% of these vehicles, or more than half of them, literally are for business purposes only. That's why I bought this truck. But since the F-150 is struggling and having a harder time, and we're going to end up selling it, I'm going to end up keeping this, or hoping to keep this, and phase it into just being my personal vehicle in the future should I get out of doing construction. And if not, it'll be a good multi-use, multi-purpose vehicle until then. I bring up work because the next vehicle in the garage is the 2009 Nissan Murano that was purchased solely as a work vehicle. This SUV is not in the best condition, either on the interior or on the exterior. It's definitely been used pretty hard in its lifetime. I believe it started out as a work vehicle, and then it was phased out by whatever company had it. An individual bought it. He had kids, you know, they were messy in the back seat. He drove it solely as a commuter. I don't know where he lived, out east somewhere, and then he moved to Cody, Wyoming. And then I ended up buying this vehicle at like 188,000 miles. We're now just under 200,000 miles. Like this week, at some point, it should roll over 200,000 miles. Again, you're probably thinking, how in the world do you put so many miles on all these vehicles? Because I've only owned this for 1 year. And in that year, it's definitely paid itself off. Now, I know that you guys are probably typing away in the comments. You should never use a Nissan as a work vehicle because it's got this dreaded CVT transmission in it, and they fail without warning and they slip, and they're going to leave you or your workers stranded on the side of the road, which I cannot have happen because we depend on this vehicle to make money. But I understand that might happen, and I'm not that concerned about it. I paid $2,700 for this car. We put just under $1,000 into repairs in it over the past year because we've driven it like 15,000 miles. We did a new radiator, new hoses, new thermostat, did all new brakes around, 2 new rear wheel bearings, and I have fought the battery since I bought it, but I'm too cheap to put a new battery in it. So we'll probably be doing a battery soon, and I am, so you guys know, going to do a transmission service on this car next week. It's going into the mechanic shop because I don't have a lift, and we'll see how bad this transmission is. If it's too bad, then I'll probably be getting rid of this car. But this car is never meant to be like my personal, I'm going to take it to Idaho all the time, drive it around all the time, need it to be a reliable car. It's used here for our local business. Yes, it does get like more miles put on it than anything in the garage, but most of our guys are really careful with the stuff, which is nice. I actually really love this car, and this car inspired one of the purchases that my wife and I made this year for our personal vehicle, the vehicle that's going to be replacing the F-150. And I don't want to give that away quite yet, but I'll just say that I love SUV life. Talk about this vehicle a lot in my review video, so go check that out. It's on the channel. Hit the big red button below so that you don't miss out on more content with this vehicle, because it might not be in great shape and it might just be a work vehicle, but I actually really enjoy and love owning this, and we're probably going to drive this poor car into the ground until it, just is not worth being repaired anymore. So stay tuned to the channel because this Murano, it's here to stay for, well, as long as I'm self-employed, but maybe even after that. And then we have the 96 Camry. So currently this car is dead. I need to charge it up and get it running. But this is also leaving the garage. It's being sold. It has 150, like 2,000 miles on it, and I've put 50 miles on it. I actually bought this car on behalf of my parents, but when I did, it was February and the snow was that thick on it, so it didn't look this bad. But this is a pretty bad car that'll make a really reliable mechanically commuter. So this is definitely being sold. I just have to get the title in my name, which I haven't done over the past year. We've done quite a bit of content on this car, so check it out on the channel because we did some crazy stuff to it just to get it back into good mechanical condition. While the outside of this car is completely destroyed, the interior of this car is practically brand new. So if somebody doesn't buy it as a donor, it'll actually make a pretty good driver. But it is definitely an eyesore here in my driveway, and it is leaving very soon. Okay, bear with me just a little longer because we're getting down to the last 4 vehicles. Yeah, I have a problem, but behind me is my 2008 F-250 XLT, which has another 5.4 liter 3-valve Triton motor in it. I know I've said multiple times on this channel as well as my other channel, please do not buy the 5.4 liter 3-valve, and then I go out and buy not only another 5.4, but one with more miles on it than my F-150, which now my F-150's caught up to this. I bought this at 201,000 miles like 4 or 5 months ago, and we've now got 204,000, almost 5,000 miles on it. Now, this truck was not in very good condition when I bought it. The power steering's out, the VVTs are starting to lock up, which I didn't know until after I bought it. And it had a huge dent and a scrape all down like this whole side. Supposedly, the town of Manderson that owned this truck, somebody sideswiped or hit a guardrail with that side, and they broke the back window out, and something happened with the front windshield. So it's got like new glass around and whatnot. Now, this was bought brand new by the city of Manderson. They owned it for years. They sold it to a lady that started to work construction and needed something to pull her camper around, which this must have been cheap because she chose this. She lost money on it selling it to me. It had horrible tires on it, has this power steering leak issue that I actually have a pump for to fix. And like I said, the VVTs are locking up, big dents. and nobody in their right mind would pay $3,500, which is what I paid for it. And that was, you know, the market started to come up. It was crazy high, and I thought that was a bad price for this piece of crap. And then literally the market just keeps going up. So I probably could have sold it in that condition for $5,000, which to me doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But I had in my mind that I was going to put a service bed on this truck. I went out and bought a service bed. It was for a dually pickup. It didn't fit. I bought a second one, also for a dually pickup. Don't ask me, you know, what I was thinking. Maybe I'll show those on the channel soon, but I have both of those for sale. And then I was at an auction with my dad looking at an old 6.5 diesel and a few other things, which none of it we bought. But I ended up bidding the first bid on an old service bed for $350, and we put that on this truck. So big side swipe dents off, a really old rusty service bed is put on, but it looks really nice on the truck. Like, you can't tell that it's completely worn out until you're up close. But it still works great for work, and this is a great work pickup. But I am going to be taking off the valve covers and putting new VVT solenoids on, and I will be showing all of that on the channel very soon. Now, I may have bought the 08 F250 service pickup after I bought our 2015 Ford Focus, which I don't even think I've talked about or shown on the channel. It maybe was sitting in the background of some of my videos, but that is actually my wife and I's personal vehicle. Now, we got a really good deal on it, so we couldn't pass it up. We needed something newer since we drive from here, Wyoming, to Idaho all of the time, and the old F-150 just keeps getting older. Plus, gas prices keep going up like crazy, and we don't really want to take the old Camry to Idaho, so we bought something newer. It was a really good deal, couldn't pass it up. I could sell it and make a pretty decent profit, but my wife and I use it an awful lot. We bought it less than 6 months ago at 120,000 miles. Yes, it had a lot of miles on it for what it is, and we've already ran it up to like 124,000 miles. She's starting to use it to commute since we're going to sell the Camry and I have to detail it, but we also use it to drive from here to Idaho all the time, or from here to Billings if we take just kind of a quick trip. And it's a really nice car, and that's where the garage is at, or at least where it was at the end of 2021. Since then, my wife and I have decided to sell a few vehicles, and we've actually made a couple of surprise purchases that we weren't really planning on making, but sometimes when there's a really good deal or something that you've been looking for a long time, you just can't pass it up. And one of those purchases, the first purchase, was this. So this is a 2008 Honda Pilot, which had been wrecked sometime in November of last year, so it's on a salvage title, and I actually have to get it inspected and all of that. So probably partly the main reason why we got such a good deal on this car. And yes, I know it's not the 2009, the updated version and model, but the 2008 was still a really, really good car. You can put a crazy amount of miles on these vehicles and still have them last like a really long time, which makes them really, really hard to find for a decent or even an affordable price. I'm not really sure that I should be disclosing this, but my wife and I have thought about getting a newer or a nicer vehicle for a long time, something to match the caliber of our 2015 Ford Focus, but in terms of something four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, because we do drive a lot from Wyoming to Idaho in the wintertime. We travel a lot more in the wintertime, actually, because we're not out doing as much work, so we have more free time to travel in the winter. But you can't drive the Ford Focus on Wyoming roads in the winter, so, and that's mostly because I don't want to run a ton of miles up on our Duramax pickup. Diesel trucks are really expensive to fix, especially if you're not using them for work. So we reserve the Duramax mainly as a work pickup or to drive, you know, when we need a nice, reliable pickup. But we wanted to get something else that we could run the miles up on in the wintertime, because my 2004 F-150 just maybe isn't as reliable as it used to be. In fact, we're trying to sell that. So this vehicle, the 2008 Honda Pilot, is a replacement vehicle for my 2004 F-150. Also, gas prices are getting crazy expensive, so we needed something that's a little bit more fuel efficient, but still has all-wheel drive. and this was the answer. And finally, the last vehicle in the garage is actually one that is not parked here at my rental at the moment. It's up in the yard where we park all of the old equipment for the winter, and that is because we just picked this vehicle up. So I'm going to go ahead and show some videos and pictures of it right now. But I picked up a 2000 7.3 liter diesel in an F250 with a service bed on it. Not in the best of shape, but I bought this sight unseen going off this one picture that I'll show you right here. I actually lucked out with this purchase because it seems to be everything that the seller said it was, but it is still currently not running and it is in non-running condition. I have not done any videos on the channel on it yet, but I have some in the works as I work on this truck. So you'll want to hit the big red button and stay subscribed to the channel here, as well as Nate's Trucks, to see what is going on with that pickup. And just like that, this video is over. I do apologize for really drawing this out and making it such a long video. I did want to kind of briefly give a brief history on each car or truck and just show how much we've used it over the past year. Now, most of these are work vehicles. My wife and I's two personal vehicles are going to be the 08 Pilot and the 15 Focus. Obviously, we still have the 04 F-150, and we've got the 95 Camry, plus that other 96 Camry that was a project. So those three vehicles will be leaving us, or hopefully be leaving us here shortly. The F-150 is still kind of up for debate. Yes, I am going to try listing it to sell, but if it doesn't sell, I'm just going to push it off into the business, and it'll become a business vehicle that I can drive around as a crew truck and tow a little bit with. I do hope that we can sell that where the market is high right now, though. So if you want to see content on that, drop a comment below before it leaves the garage. This video is actually going to go up pretty currently to when I filmed it. It'll be like the next day or something, which isn't the case for all of my videos. But I hope this video was valuable in going through each car. We have so many vehicles, it's just too hard for me to create constant content on each one and to keep you updated daily on each one. So there's a lot of behind the scenes repairs and maintenance that you guys don't see on these cars. But if you do want to see something specific on one of these vehicles, this is your chance to leave me a comment below, because I will respond to any questions that you have. And I might even go as far as to make a video or a whole video series on a vehicle if you guys would like to see it. You guys are the whole reason that we do YouTube. I really love the support, and thank you so much for being subscribed to the channel. If you're not a current subscriber, subscribe right now, because you don't want to miss out on future content. And with all of that said, get out and enjoy your automotive ownership. Hopefully it's not as hectic as mine, and I'll catch you in the next video.